Hello and welcome to our program, Where God Weeps, a program where we talk about the situation of the suffering church around the world. Mongolia, which is about the size of Alaska, has a population of 2.8 million, of which approximately 80% practice Tibetan Buddhism. Christians number only 2%. Mongolia is encircled by China and Russia. It was the Russians who originally helped the Mongolians to drive out their Chinese rulers, but who then stayed on to control the state for another 70 years. The communist regime tried all they could to wipe out any sign of religion from society. In this landlocked country, dominated by sparsely populated steppe and semi-desert, however, the Church today has found fertile ground for evangelization. From a Christian population of 0, Bishop Padilla, the Bishop of Mongolia, has seen Catholicism take root and blossom, growing to approximately 900 persons, with 50 or more Mongolians preparing each year for baptism. The church is new, says Bishop Padilla. He calls it an infant church, a baby church. To tell us more about the story of the church in Mongolia, it is my great pleasure to welcome Bishop Wenceslao Padilla, the Bishop of the Apostolic Prefecture of Mongolia. Your Excellency, thank you for being here with us today on our program.
It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here.
Your Excellency,
Yes.
to the situation when you first arrived in 1992, you were alone with 2 other priests, or 3 other priests I think you started with, and you had nothing. What was it like? It felt a bit like the first apostles, evangelizing to a people who had no knowledge of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, indeed we had to start from scratch, no? From 0 really. We had nobody to welcome us as Christians, to welcome us. We had no building to go to.
Where would you, for example, celebrate Mass? Where were you housed?
The first Masses that we have celebrated were in the hotel, the Ulaanbaatar Hotel. And then when we found these apartments built by the Russians, we started renting them, and we had our first liturgical celebrations in those rented apartments.
What was this time like? It must have been, as I mentioned, I think it must have been like the first apostles. How were you received by the people?
Well, they didn't know that we are Catholic priests, no? But slowly, through our contacts with the foreign community, those working in international organizations or in embassies, we started celebrating the Eucharist with them, and after some time, these people from the expat communities, they started inviting their own workers, Mongolian workers or personnel. Yeah.
Establishing the Catholic faith in Mongolia, did it take off like a wildfire, or did it take some time for the ground to be prepared?
Well, it was a very slow start, because we ourselves, the 3 missionaries of the CICM, Congregatio Immaculati Cordis Mariae, we didn't know how to start, but we encourage ourselves by saying, come and see. So the people come and see, and then we associate with them, we talk with them, we try to let them understand our purpose in being there, because they have been questioning us, why are you here? What for are you here? So it's a very slow start, as I said.
But there were Christians before you came in 1992. There was a history of Christian mission already in Mongolia. What was this history?
I think in the 13th century, there have been exchanges between the emperor and the Holy See, and with the Holy Father, and then, but these things have not lasted, because these people from the Vatican or the Holy See, they were just emissaries bringing letters of the Holy Father to the emperor, and likewise, the Emperor of Mongolia was also sending letters through emissaries. No? But there have been attempts to stay in Mongolia, but it never worked out.
So it never took root?
Yes, but in 1921, there was an attempt to establish already Missio Sui Iuris, an independent mission. And some of my confreres who were in China were earmarked to start the mission in Outer Mongolia, but it never worked out.
It never worked.
Yeah, but when we arrived there were already 2 years of activity by the Christian or the Protestant missionaries. So they were ahead 2 years of us.
Okay.
Yes.
And how are the relations with the Protestant communities now? If I understand correctly, there are some 200 different Protestant churches active in Mongolia. How are the relations between yourself and the Protestant communities?
Well, we maintain cordial, friendly relations with them. We never have arguments with them, but we are friendly to
good.
each one. And with the other religious communities also, we try to do the same. And
to keep the dialogue.
Yes, to keep the dialogue and to know each other. And it works, especially on every September 21, we have this International Day of Peace. And we invite those church organizations or communities to join in the prayers for peace for the world. No?
Your Excellency, you come from the Philippines. How did you make it from the Philippines all the way to Mongolia? What brought you personally to Mongolia?
Well, as a missionary of the CICM, Scout Missionaries of Belgium, we are sent to other places, not our own countries. So I was first in Taiwan for 15 years before I went to Mongolia. So as the Russians left Mongolia, the Mongolian government wanted to have diplomatic relations with the Vatican, because at the time when they were left alone by the foreign, what do you call this, powers, first by China and then afterwards by Russia, they wanted to have diplomatic relations with other countries. And it so happens that Vatican is one of their choice city-state or country, you know, because they know that Vatican has an international influence. No? So they were thinking that maybe by having diplomatic relations with the Vatican, they will be faster in connecting with other countries.
In the international community.
Yes, in the international community.
You said once that your father was an example for you, for your vocation. How was your father an example for you in your missionary life?
Well, I was a small boy when I found out that my father is a catechist, a religious educator of the CICM in the mountain provinces. So we have been following my father wherever he was assigned. No, so I think it has some influence on me in my growing up to admire the foreign missionaries like the Belgians. No?
He must have been proud when he came to know of your vocation and your priesthood.
Yes, in fact, he asked me to be free in deciding, but my mother was more intent on having me as a missionary or a priest.
About 80% of Mongolia's 2.8 million follow Tibetan Buddhism.
Yes.
How did Tibetan Buddhism, first of all, come to Mongolia? And then secondly, are they open for evangelization? Is there a willingness, is there a reception to the Christian message?
I think the Tibetan Buddhists started their mission in Mongolia still the 7th century, I think. So it's not really a traditional or a national religion. It came also from India.
Right.
So with the government insisting on this as their national religion, the people had to join in. And it's very amazing how these people, practicing or not, I don't know, that they are receptive to any kind of religion, especially after there being released from the communistic rule, no? So seemingly, I think during the communist regime, there was a spiritual vacuum. There have been persecutions, cultural persecutions, no? But the people then somewhat have a spiritual vacuum, and when they were liberated somewhat from this grip of communism, they started catering to any kind of idea or any kind of new thing that entered Mongolia. So they are receptive.
How would you say, do you still see the scars of communism on the hearts of the people today? And if so, how is this manifest?
It is diminishing, although some of the government officials are still maybe complying to what they learned from communism at the time. So,
but among the general population, as you say, it's diminishing. There's a greater openness to something else, and I suppose to Western values, or what values would they be looking towards?
I think the Mongolians would like to identify themselves better with the European values. No? So there is an openness to what is happening in the world, and they are very also very open to any kind of new things happening in their lives, especially fashion or those technologies. Or they are very receptive to that. They're
taking it on quickly.
Yes.
Your Excellency, there are now, in the 22 years that you've been there, a community of 900 Catholics that have grown, with over 71 missionaries, of which 20 religious priests. Has this surprised you, and what sign of hope is this for you, for the Mongolian community and Mongolia?
Yeah, I really depend on the dedication and the commitment of my missionaries, 71 strong, and with 20 priests and 2 brothers, and the rest are nuns or sisters. Without them, I think the mission will not move on. So with their dedication to their work, the mission is going on.
And would your focus now be on catechists, on laity like your father was? Is that where you see that the future of spreading the gospel is?
I think it's only one of the aspects of evangelization. And I emphasize that evangelization has to take place in any aspect of society's life, no? In the society. So whatever we are doing, either we are doing social work, developmental work, education work, or charitable humanitarian work, we find ourselves evangelizing. So it is very important for us that we have to be active in all the facets of the Mongolian society.
I want to come to the question of the social work of the Church a little bit later on, but just one question I would have, because the Catholic community has been growing very strongly, up to 900 as we've mentioned, but at the same time, 20% of those that have converted to the Catholic faith have subsequently left the Church. Is this unusual? Why and for what reason have this 20% left the Church?
I think it's a usual thing that happens in any kind of Christian community, even what we have in the Philippines. No? Because I think because of the influence of outside influence of different circumstances that are happening in Mongolia at the present time.
For example?
So from a nomadic form of existence, the people are now catering to live in the cities, and then there they find themselves sometimes very much confused or don't find a belonging. And also because of the entry of market economy, the people are becoming more materialistic and consumerist in their attitude, no? And especially now, Mongolia is undergoing a transition, I will say a transition, wherein from the nomadic form of existence, they are going to a civilized way of living. They are more open to other countries and to the Western influence, no?
In fact, you mentioned, I think in an interview you were quoted as saying that you felt it was important for the people to move from this nomadic lifestyle to a more sedentary life or civilization. Why do you see this importance of let's say, the movement away from the nomadic lifestyle?
Well, I think the nomadic lifestyle is a very difficult life. No, just imagine every year 6 months you are in the cold. No, and it's difficult. And as a democratic country with this new democracy that the people are clinging to, I think they have to adjust themselves to the other democratic countries, no, the people there. So I think it's good for them.
It's better for the civilization.
The civilization.
I want to come back to the question of materialism, and particularly for the young people. I think that in many regards, Mongolia is experiencing a very rapid transition from, as we know, of this nomadic culture and herding culture to the life in the cities with all of the new technology that's available. How do you work? How do you try and educate the youth to all of this new globalization and perhaps secular values and perhaps materialism? How do you educate these young people to be able to manage these new challenges?
Well, that is the big challenge that we are having now. That's why I believe that to have an impact on the society, to have the most important thing that we have to address is the education of the youth. So that's how I came to think of establishing schools, no? And luckily, I think that the missionaries are also in this idea.
In fact, you've started the first Catholic elementary school, I think, in September of 2013.
Yes.
It's the largest. I think you mentioned earlier that there were some smaller initiatives. There were religious sisters running some small, but this is really a large government-approved Catholic school, elementary school, with 160 students. Is that correct?
No, it's around 85 students at the moment. But if we will make it into full use, maybe we can cater to 250, 300 youngsters.
Now, why is this such an important milestone, this school, in terms of your relations with the government and in society?
Yeah, the government is itself going into this direction, that the people need to be educated. No, the president is very strong on the education of children. No, because now biggest part of the population of Mongolia is children and the youth. No, so we have to be carried with the trend of the times, especially in the society. If they need education, so the church must be present also in this kind of apostolate. And
the government is looking favorably at the church as one area, one resource for education.
I hope that they will look on the contribution of the Catholic Church as a good contribution to the society, because there are still restrictions that they are placing on church organizations or on religions.
But hopefully through the good example, these will with time fall away.
Yes, I hope so.
Your Excellency, also with the question of street children, in Ulaanbaatar, for example, there are a great number of street children, sadly, and the church has been very active. In fact, your own missionary community has been very active in working with these street children in making a home. First of all, why are street children so prevalent in Ulaanbaatar? And again, is there space given by the government to the church to start to expand these kind of social activities?
Yes, at the very beginning, the need was there. There were so many children who were running away from home, and they go to the streets, especially those coming from the countryside, because of the difficulty of living there in the countryside, because of poverty.
And also, just to come back, this nomadic lifestyle, is it something that the people, was this also an impact, or was it simply the poverty that was driving the young people to the cities?
Yes, at the very beginning it was like that, but times have changed at the present time, when the government started taking also their responsibility towards the youth, no? So they started doing something about this, and giving, for instance, subsidies to the families so that the children could go to school. So less and less street children are found in the streets, but there are still people, the adults, no? Older people who are found in the streets, who are collecting in the garbages
Really?
of
Because
people.
previously the society, if I understand correctly, the society would have looked after, the community would have looked after the elderly. Is this again a new phenomenon, or is this something that has tragically been here throughout the history of the country? This let's say the fact that the community is not looking after its elderly.
Yes, at the very beginning, because of lack of funds, I think the government could not do. And I could say that during the early years of our stay there, when the society was not yet going into progress, I think the government had to see to it that, some organizations, NGOs, can take over the work. No?
Your Excellency, what would be other areas now that the church is expanding, or where would you say you would like to expand in, especially in the area of social services?
Because we have so many social service projects, we would like to support, to go on with this social works, no? Because we are also limited with the finances to support them. As maybe you know, in Mongolia we don't have any local income, so we have to depend on funding organizations or the congregations that we have to support our projects.
We've been speaking a lot about the poverty, and yet at the same time Mongolia's economy over the last few years has been growing very rapidly. I think an average of 17% over the last 2 years. And if I understand correctly, the skyline of the capital has changed dramatically, with a lot of new high-rises and a lot of new wealth. But from what I understand, or from what I'm hearing from you, this wealth is not trickling down to the lower levels of society. Is this a reality? How do you see this question?
Well, a part of that progress or increase of what I call this material support is already reaching the people, but still very minimal. The progress that is seen at the present time is due to the mining activities. There's a lot of mines, and investors from other countries are very busy with these activities. Like, for instance, Australia, Canada, and other countries. They are putting a lot of investment on these mining industries, trying to take copper, gold, coal, and then uranium even, and other precious stones from the earth.
So the potential for growth is extraordinary.
Yes, but then I just hope that the profit of these mining activities will also reach the people.
In fact, like in the Philippines, in Mongolia, many of the family members, or at least one family member, is abroad, a breadwinner abroad, sending money back to the family at home.
Yes, I think that was the trend in the past years, and the government, after having all these activities, progress being done in Mongolia, the government would like to recall back the Mongolians who are working abroad, because there is already work to do in Mongolia.
Your Excellency, with the relation with the government, there are still some areas, let's say, of concern, or where there could be improvement, and one of the areas is missionaries. Specifically, that there are still quotas on the number of missionaries allowed into the country. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenge of quotas on the number of missionaries, and why is this still a problem?
The government has a policy on trying to restrict the number of foreign missionaries or foreign workers at large. No? So every year they have to make a policy. Like this year it is 75-25, meaning that for every 25 foreign missionaries or foreign workers, we have to employ 75 local people or Mongolians. No? So it is a challenge in a way that, we are many missionaries there already, and we have to be, if we have to be consistent, we have to increase the number of our Mongolian workers. No? But the problem is we don't have that much money to support salaries, no?
Okay.
So it is a challenge, not only for us Catholics, but also for other denominations. Yes.
So finance is a problem not only in terms
Yes.
of the missionaries, but what other projects, what would you say are your hopes? What would be your greatest needs for the church in Mongolia that you would perhaps like to mention, also for those who are with us today in our program?
Yes, in the last 22 years, we have been putting up infrastructure of the Catholic Church, like buildings and in churches. And so with the very harsh winters that we have, our buildings also could not resist all those severe winters, though. So they grow old and they are destroyed or cracking. So there is a lot to repair. No?
A lot of infrastructure.
Yes, infrastructures. So, but anyhow, that's where we are appealing to the funding institutions and to our benefactors to support us in this, to carry out the work that we are doing, especially on repairs of churches. A good example is the cathedral. So it's a very beautiful masterpiece done by the Yugoslavs or Czechoslovakians together with Mongolians, but now it's leaking all over. And whenever I see this cathedral, I call it always a crying room when
because
I enter.
It's weeping so
because it's weeping, dripping whenever the snow melts or when there is strong rain. So, but anyway, if we need some help, it is to maintain, support our present engagements or commitments.
Your Excellency, thank you for having been with us today in our program.
It's a great pleasure to be here.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today on our program Where God Weeps. And if you'd like to know more about the situation of Catholics in Mongolia, or perhaps how you might be able to help Bishop Padilla in his efforts to grow the community, I would ask you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.